So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to spend the next hour walking through, first of all, what teams are, what they're good for, but also how it falls under the broader ecosystem of Microsoft around Office 365. I'll make sure once you walk out of here, you have a good sense of the fundamentals of Office 365 groups, teams, and more importantly, my good friend Richard here will talk about common use cases, and he'll share what they're doing at Dyson. Does that sound good? A couple of housekeeping items. We asked that you fill out the evaluation once we're done. If you have questions, raise your hand or hit us up. We'll be more than happy to chat with you. And also, I'm on Twitter at MeetDucks throughout the session. I'm live tweeting. So some of the key points and links and all that good stuff are being tweeted. So feel free to follow along as you listen through. But with that being said, Richard, perhaps you want to do a quick intro about yourself.
Yeah, no problem at all. So my name's Richard Vine. I work for Dyson. I am their Information Collaboration Application Lead. I've been working at Dyson for 3 years now. I've been in IT for around 20 years. Done many different roles, database, web, service desk management, but by far the most fun is absolutely in the SharePoint Teams arena. So I'm here today really to talk to you about the real life scenario. So we've been using Teams since November not last year, the year before, so 2015. 16, sorry. So I'll talk you through today some of the stuff that we've been doing.
Fantastic. So as we walk through today, the way we're going to cover this session is we'll talk about the reality of how modern workplaces today, things you have to consider before we jump into technology, and then we'll talk about the bigger landscape of Microsoft, as to how they think about the modern workplace. And then we'll jump into Teams. I'll walk you through from the basics of what Teams are, or and then how you create teams, channels, the bots, all those good stuff. We'll look at some of the integrations that we can do. And also, certainly, Richard will talk about what they're doing in their world. Then we'll look at external collaboration, guest access, and then what's new with Teams. Now, Richard, I would just have to make a little request. From this point onwards, when I'm going to refer to a collective of people, I'm not going to use the word groups or teams. It's kind of confusing. I'm going to use posse. Does that work?
All right, we'll use posse.
All right, maybe you want to use tribe or gang. Or
I can handle tribe.
Yeah. So, just to make sure when we say teams or groups, we're referring to the product. All right? Posse and tribe. Okay, let's get going here. So, what does the word look like today? I mean, in the last couple years, technology has changed the way we live, the way we work. I mean, first thing you do, you woke up this morning, you reach out your hand and you grab your phone, right? Don't tell your spouse that. You scroll through your newsfeed on Facebook, maybe check Twitter, or most of us that are committed to work look at your email. Work is not a place you go to anymore. We work with anything, anywhere, and thanks to technology, be it good or bad, we can do that. I mean, how have you seen work change? You said you've been in this business in 20 years, pretty much in IT, yeah?
Absolutely. So I think when you start to look at this slide here, so the then could even be some people now. So in that cubicle, so that's you individually on your own, not working really with anyone. Maybe get a bit of paper put over the top when you were IT, say, can you do this job? I remember that, but everyone else does. But the now. So this is about everyone working together, being in one place or being in any place. Starbucks. This could be in your cafe. I don't know if any of you have a problem with meeting rooms. Dyson, we have a massive problem with meeting rooms. If you go into our cafe, you will see at least 20 to 30 meetings going on.
In an open area?
In an open area.
Wow.
Exactly like this. We have about 10 to 15 Microsoft Surface Hubs all spread around the world. These are fantastic collaboration tools. We're able to work on these. Really secure. If you never use Surface Hub, I highly recommend you have a look at one. Thank you very much.
So Richard, let me ask you this. How big is Dyson? How big is Dyson?
So Dyson is currently 10,000 people. We're spread all over the world. We've got our head office in Malmesbury, where we've got around 3,000 people. We've just bought some land down in Halabbington. So this is just up the road from Malmesbury. This is where we're going to be about 10 times the size of where we are now. And we'll probably grow to around 15, 20,000 hopefully in the next 5 years.
And as you mentioned, not only you're out of here, but you're all over the world, right?
Absolutely. US, UK, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, everywhere. Absolutely everywhere.
So I suspect your workforce then varies.
So we use the Surface Hub absolutely in our open IT area, so it can get booked out as a resource, so people can just walk up to it, pick the pen, start drawing, and as soon as you're done, that's it, and then it resets.
Awesome. So I suspect in this large organization, you have different generations, different types of work style, and can you talk about that? Because especially with this is, by the way, friends, a research done by Avanade that depending on your generation, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if you're a baby boomer, but people have different preferences on how they work and how they communicate. So a quick example, right? If you're a baby boomer born between 1946 to 64, in-person meeting is the choice of baby boomers. And email is the mode of communication collaboration. But look at that. Generation Z, 1998, 2020, email is almost non-existent. Now, some of us may be thinking as IT, well, they don't have a choice. They come into work my way or the highway. No soup for you. Next. Wrong audience. That was a Seinfeld show in the US. But point being is, we can't do that anymore, as you know, because if we tell the business, no, it's only email, well, you don't have to forget it. I'm going to box it, I'm going to Dropbox it, I'm going to Asana, I'm going to Slack. So how do you think about this, Richard, especially in your world? I'm sure you have multi-generational people.
So I'd love to ask a question. Can anyone tell me what they think the average age of we have at Dyson, the average age of the person who works at Dyson? Not bad, 28. Okay? So it's a very, very young people. So as you can imagine, we've just opened our Dyson Institute of Technology. So this is James Dyson's idea to actually start to generate more engineers and get more people into the business. We don't have enough engineers. Okay, so we need these people. So at the moment, we've got lots and lots and lots of people coming in. This is all the Generation Z, and we're giving them email. And we don't give them any collaboration tools. So they are struggling. In 3 years' time, we're going to have the next generation come in. And when that next generation comes in, we give them email. How long do you think they're going to stay? They're not. They're going to leave. And I believe at the moment, I think the average number of years that someone stays at work is around 3.
Yes.
We want to start. We invest a lot of money in our staff. We really, really do. And we look after our people as much as we possibly can. So we don't want to train them up, get them in, and then they leave. And they do that because they get frustrated with the technology. They get frustrated that you send them an email with a document on it, they then change, and then they send it back to someone else, and they change and so on. So when you're working at home and you're working with your family, I would imagine very few of you do that through email. I do that through WhatsApp. I do it through iMessage. I do it through Messenger. Lots of different ways, but I'm not doing it through email.
Now, Richard, I know in my personal life, email is only used to get my Amazon.com receipts.
Absolutely.
I don't really work on my holiday planning through email. But then when I walk into work here, something changes. Everything has to be an email. Right?
Yeah, I think it's just the legacy of thinking it's the most secure way. So just to give you an example. Okay? So it's real life. So in Dyson, we have an RDD area. This is our research development. Imagine, so I'm sure you all know that we're making a car, an electric vehicle, Dyson. Don't know the car. So this is not new news. But imagine someone's designed something and they email it and they send it to the wrong person. An email. Easy happens, doesn't it? Has anyone else emailed the wrong person? I have. Actually, one of my previous companies, about 6 years ago, I emailed the CEO guys, which was nearly Korean, but I managed to get through that, so it was okay. But so we've now removed that functionality. There's no auto add or auto change the email address so that it goes to the wrong person. It's so scared that email's going to be sent to the wrong person. So we need to start moving away from this technology. It's not future.
And as a result of this, Microsoft realizes that it's different strokes for different folks. There's not one ring that will rule them all. There's not a single solution that will address communication and collaboration. When I talk to customers, on one hand, they get frustrated. They say, I don't understand Microsoft. They just released Yammer. Next week they have OneDrive. Week after SharePoint, then Teams, and then Staff Hub, and then Run DMC. they got that. Why, right? It just makes my life harder as IT. Well, okay, let's say Microsoft doesn't do that. All Microsoft gave us is Exchange Online, OneDrive, and SharePoint, and life was much simpler back then. But guess what? The marketing department's like, SharePoint or ScarePoint, that's too much, too hard, right? You know, I'm just gonna swipe my credit card and get Slack, because that's easy. There's an app. Right? Or I'm gonna use Asana for my lightweight project management tool, because Project Online is too much. Y'all with me? So what Microsoft has done is not only they've helped you save money because you're not going to pay extra, but depending on the communication collaboration of choice, be it email, content management, or having an intranet, co-authoring with Office, you can jump on Word and work together. You want to do voice video meetings with Skype, chat-based workspace with Teams, and enterprise social VMware, they provide you that. I'm not saying it's perfect, but now you can fulfill the needs of different generation of workforce and different modes of interaction they want. But more importantly, it sits in the same platform. You don't have to worry about paying multiple vendors and integration and how data flows back and forth. And then the last bit, which is critical to me, is in the area of security and compliance. Because authentication and identity is handled essentially by Azure AD. And Microsoft, I'm sure you've seen, is investing a lot in security and compliance. With a looming GDPR regulation kicking in May, this is very important. That's why Microsoft's a local data center here in UK. Now, before we jump into Teams, it's very, very important for us to understand how all this works together. So Dux, what you're saying is, no matter if I'm in Outlook, in Teams, in Yammer, in Skype, especially if I'm collaborating with my posse, all of that can have a seamless experience and, more importantly, secure 100%. How's that done? That's done through a technology called Office 365 Groups. Now, I want to explain this clearly because unless you understand this, you will not appreciate Teams. And there's a lot of confusion out there around Office 365 Groups. So, indulge me here, and I want to break it down for you. So what is Office 365 Groups? Office 365 Groups is a membership provider. It's not a tool. It's not, you can't compare this with Teams. It's a membership provider. So what you do with Office 365 Groups, you can define your posse who's part of that membership. If you're familiar back in the day of AD, it's kind of like the security. Y'all with me? So Office 365 Group is an Azure technology, and again, it provides a membership service across these different Office 365 applications. Hold on, Dux. Wait. But what's all this around groups versus teams? Should I use teams versus groups and all that? Let me explain. So this is how it works, right? Before I jump into the next slide, let me kind of draw this. Somebody was asking me this earlier, so I draw this quickly. I know it's kind of...
It's your best work.
Yeah, it's artistic. Hey, I'm not Banksy, I'm Duxy. So, anyway. So listen, this is important. So, let's say my posse here, we're working on planning for our next holiday party. And as we're planning a holiday party, there's a lot of elements to it. Not only our communication, there may be some flyers we need to put together, there may be some budget we need to put together, all that good stuff. And back in the days, before all this, the way we would do it is, let's create a SharePoint site. You all remember SharePoint, right? Let's create a SharePoint site. That will be where all our projects, information is, our documents are, and all that good stuff. But here's the problem. There's a disconnect. When we create that SharePoint site for project collaboration, we still talk on email. Y'all with me? And then there's separate threads. And I hate to admit this, email still rules. The SharePoint site just becomes a place where all files go to die. So what Microsoft has decided, you know what? As we start this initiative, go ahead and create an Office 365 group. most common way of creating Office 365 group is in Outlook. So in Microsoft Outlook, there's a button there that says Create Group. Listen, this is important. When you do that, it instantiates that Office 365 group for your posse, and then it creates multiple technology capabilities as a part of that membership. It creates a SharePoint site to store your documents. It creates a calendar so you can share. You'll have a shared calendar. It creates a notebook so you have a shared notebook. And this is the important part. It creates a distribution list called Groups in Outlook. We're good? So now when you create Office 365 Groups in Outlook, it creates all this stuff, including this thing called Groups in Outlook, which essentially gives you that distribution list capability. So now you have a single email, you can email your posse, all that good stuff. We're not talking about Teams yet. So forget Teams for now. So when you create this in Outlook, it creates all this stuff. Okay, docs, I get it. But how many ways can I create an Office 365 group? Last I checked, it was about 11. What? You can create it in Outlook. You can create it in Planner. You can create it in Teams. You can create it in Yammer. You can create it in SharePoint. You can create it in Azure. You can create it in Stream. You can create it in Power BI. You can create it in PowerShell, Staff Hub, on and on and on. So, when people are comparing groups in Teams, they're not comparing Office 365 groups. What people are comparing is groups in Outlook in Teams. Does this help? All right, so with that, definitely we'll unpack Teams in a second. To start, to have a good understanding of all these technology, I love this slide on how Microsoft thinks about it. Richard?
Yeah, so this slide came out, I think, a couple of months ago, and I really, really like this slide, because when I'm trying to explain to people at Dyson what is Yammer, what is Teams, it's just really, really useful. So if we think about our inner loop, okay, these are the people that you are dealing with every single day, who are you having purpose. Okay, this could be a project, this could be a staff party, this could even be a Friday night out. Okay, that's your inner loop. It's a group of people that you know. The outer loop is those other people that are in your organisation. So if we're in the UK, you've got someone in France, Germany, anywhere like that. You don't actually know them, but they are part of your business. You might need to communicate with them. They're your outer loop. So to give you a brief example of a real life scenario for this, so I was on the phone last Thursday to Australia at 10 p.m. because there's no good time to be in Australia, unfortunately, and they wanted Yammer. Okay, Yammer's massive in Australia, really, really big, and we're not quite ready to give them Yammer yet. They're 300 people. So I've convinced them that Teams is the way to go, because actually they just want their market. They just want Australia. So what we've done is we've created 3 different teams within Teams, and they're going to start using it. And later on, once we've actually started to kind of see the results of that, and we start to roll that out across all of the other markets, actually we'll then start to roll out Yammer. Not heavily to start with, but it will give them that communication directly. Now, I get a feeling, this is just my gut feeling, the way Yammer's going to be used mostly is about the biking club. There's a massive, massive bike club at Dyson. They love riding. And I think that's going to be the most popular group in Yammer at the moment. Because I think Teams is so versatile and so useful that actually a lot of them are just going to end up sitting there. Okay? So, and you can see underneath, it pins all of this Office 365 groups. This security group, I would call it, and that's just explain that. And then we've also got the email. Everyone loves email. We're never going to get rid of email. Okay? Since I've been using Teams for now over a year, the amount of email has dropped for me. Okay? Internally, absolutely not externally. Why? Because I don't have external collaboration, external sharing technology. Because we're not quite ready. Okay? So we need to understand how we're going to manage that and make sure that when we do start to open it up externally, it's done securely, so that actually it doesn't start to freak people out. And I mean the execs. That's who it freaks out. As soon as they get freaked out, you shut down. Okay, so you really need to get that. So I really like this slide for selling this to the execs. This is my exec slide, really. It's not my slide. It's a Microsoft slide. But it just proves that you're going in the right direction. This is the way that a lot of companies are going. You're not on a technology that is dying. You're on a technology that is growing. 125,000 organizations use 181 markets, 25 languages. Now, for me, that's important. Because what I want to do is I want to make Office 365 and everything that we use on it as inclusive as I possibly can. I've been very, very lucky with both that I've travelled to different countries. And when I went to Japan, I found out 50% of the organisation they can English. That's all the people in the contact center. So why would you use everything in English? It's very bad. So for me, language is massive. And when you start to come onto different technologies like Stream, that are going to start to take that and start to convert it into different languages for you automatically, where you don't have to go and pay thousands and thousands of pounds. But I don't know about you, but we spend a lot of money to convert documents and convert video to make sure that we do include everyone within the business. Because you need to. That's what it's about.
Thank you, Richard. So setting that stage, let's jump into Teams, right? So what's Teams? And then I'll jump into tons of demos here. Teams is the hub for teamwork. And where Teams is used, as Richard mentioned, is for your inner loop. It's for your posse, your day-to-day work, the project you're working on. And I love Teams because, for me, that's my new Outlook client. You know, I work with an awesome group of 60 people around the world in my organization. And our day-to-day work is all in Microsoft Teams. So how does Microsoft Teams work, Dux? Can you walk me through it so I kind of know how to get started with it? So let me walk through an example. So first thing you want to do, if you have Office 365, if you just go to teams.microsoft.com. That's what you need to do. You get Teams from, you have E3 and above, and I believe even below E3 you get Teams. So you can check out the licensing.
Yeah, I think it's with E1 actually.
E1, yeah.
The lowest.
Yeah.
I think it might even start to go to kiosk.
Even the F1, right? The frontline workers. All right. So once you get to teams.microsoft.com, obviously you won't see anything here. First thing you want to do is you want to click Add Team. Right? So when you add a team, you can create a team, and you can call it something. So I'm going to call it the Birmingham Posse. Is that how you spell posse?
I'll do.
Not possum, right? Posse. Okay. So, and then you can put a little description. You can say, you know, this is the Tech Summit event, what have you. And then you can define the privacy setting for your team. By default, it's set to private, meaning not anybody can just jump in and join. If they want to join, they have to ask for permission. If you set it to public, anybody can just jump in and be a part of this team.
When we talk about public, though, we're talking about public in your organization. Not public as in any of you can jump in and see this thing. Okay, just to be clear on that point.
Yeah, so, and then you can add members to it. Now, before I jump in, what happened behind the scenes, Dux, when you created a team? So let me bring this OneNote up. When I created the team, what happened behind the scenes is it created an Office 365 group called Birmingham Posse. It created a SharePoint site, a calendar, a notebook, a groups and Outlook capability, and also, obviously, the team. Are we good? But wait, Dux, what if I already have an Office 365 group because I created earlier in Outlook? I don't want to create a new one. It's going to be messy. If you already have tons of Office 365 groups, in the creation screen, it will know, there's a box at the bottom, it will say, do you want to add team to your existing Office 365 group? And you can pick your Office 365 group. You will just add the Teams capability to your existing one. Y'all follow me? Okay. So that's very important because I've seen folks and organizations creating teams, essentially calling it, for the same purpose, but now they have two different sets of Office 365 groups. Now you can add members. So let me add Garth. I have a colleague named Garth Forth, or let me add Miriam. Okay.
Also known as Garth.
That's what I don't know. I typed Garth. Miriam showed up. I gotta talk to my AD people. Okay. So once you create a team, what happens? The first thing you see is what's called the general channel. So within the team, you have channels. Now the best way for me to explain this so people get it right away is comparing it to tools we use every day in our personal lives. So familiar with WhatsApp or Line or Messenger, Viber, same concept. So you can have different channels and you can call it whatever you want. So let me create a channel and show you. So I can add a channel called, I don't know, for this posse for the evening event. Okay. And you can create as much channels as you want. Now, within a channel is made up of the first tabs. So on the top part, you see what's called tabs. By default, 3 tabs are provisioned. Number 1, you have your conversations tab. So essentially, in this conversation tab, that's where all conversations happen. You go back and forth. And then the files tab, essentially, it's a library within the SharePoint site it created. And keep in mind, these libraries are specific to the channel. So the general channel will have its own library. Evening event will have its own library. How these things are organized, these are organized as folders in your SharePoint document library called Documents. And then it creates a tab called Wiki. So it's a built-in wiki in Teams. Personally, I don't really use this. I use OneNote. But the idea with wikis is you can reference specific sections in the wiki in your conversation. So you can put like little bookmarks and anchor and whatnot. So in some organizations they use. Do you guys use wikis?
Yeah, I was going to jump in there actually. So what I actually do, I don't use wikis either. I use OneNote. The reason I use OneNote is because I can open up OneNote without doing the Teams. So it means that I'm able to go straight into OneNote. I can use it really simply, and actually a lot of people use OneNote and they really like it. What I do is I drop that little menu down and I hit remove. And I actually remove it from...
Not rename, but
not
remove.
Rename, but remove. And I remove it. You have to wait a few minutes once it's sort of creates it and then just remove it. And then it's gone. I don't want it there. Okay? So I clean up my tabs at the top to make sure that it's got what I want people to see straight.
Yeah. And the cool thing is you can add as many tabs as you want. You can add a tab specific to an Excel file or a Microsoft form or a Word document or a link to a SharePoint site or a library. In fact, you can even add to external sources, right? So if you want to surface, I don't know, your assets in your Adobe Creative Cloud or a SurveyMonkey, etc. So really, if you think about it, right, this could be your command center for your work with your colleagues. Now, an example around this, so I want to show you one thing that we do in my organization. So let me bring up Teams. So one of the things that, there you go. So this is within AppPoint. This is within the AppPoint marketing team. In our team, there's a channel called Requests. So our colleagues around the world can make requests around new content, editing, a website, what have you. So in this tab, literally, it's just pointing to a, let me make sure, there you go, a SharePoint list. So instead of telling people to jump out of Teams, go to a website, whatever, they can simply go here. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. This is still in SharePoint 2013, and add a new task, all within the confines of Teams. Is this helpful? So now, one second. So now the idea is, right? We can request content, request editing, and notice there's 3 more below the tab. So you can really put in whatever you want. And essentially, this is acting as in a very basic way in iframe. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask, a channel, is it, when you create a channel, is it always in conversations? And do you add people to that? I think maybe I just missed that.
Sure, no worries. So if you want to add a channel, you go to your team, Birmingham Posse, and you can add a channel. Now, you raise another good point. Her question is, do you add people to the channel to Today, no. You add people to the team. Whoever's in the team has access to all the channels. I know there's requests to limit certain channels, make it private. That's still in the roadmap for Microsoft, but today, if you're in a team, you have access to all the channels.
And what is a channel? Exactly.
A channel, so for me, it's a separation, right? It's a way to separate different activities within your team. So my Birmingham posse, like here, we're here today, but maybe tonight we're throwing a party. There's a subset of people here taking care of the party, which I don't really am not dealing with. So they can work it over there. What's that, sir? You can add OneNote. So great question. Where's OneNote? So you can add, by default, it's not there. Let's see. It should be here, right?
Yeah, that's where that's gone. It's on mine. You must have a different version.
No, one of the things, no, that's a good point. One of the things you'll notice too when you first create your team, sometimes takes because realize it's creating a bunch of different workloads. SharePoint, OneNote. So it may take a few seconds for it to pop up, yeah, but it'll be there. The next thing I want to talk about is some of the elements on your left section, some of the navigation. One of the biggest comments and complaints that I get, especially for people to start with this, is, Dux, how do I keep up? Like, there's so much teams in my organization. How do I keep up with reading every single thing? You don't. It's like saying you're going to read every single thing on Facebook. So there's no way. So as a good practice, right, if it's something pertaining to you, like in this scenario, I say, hey, Miriam, I @mentioned her. If somebody @mentioned me, it will show up in my activity feed. So now, if I'm a part of a bunch of teams, in my activity feed, it will light up and say you have 3 or 4 or 5 items in your activity feed that you haven't seen. And then that can cross different channels, different teams. So once you select it, it'll jump into the right channel or the right team.
So the other thing as well on the activity feed, so if we just drop down here, you've got team activity and my activity, and you've also got filter, and you can do search. This is really, really helpful. I use this quite a lot because I've got quite a few teams. We had sent through our new expenses policy the other day, actually, and it just surfaced around teams. Couldn't remember where it was. So just put in expense, did a search, clicked on files, found it instantly. So it's really, really helpful to me. So it's got really, really good search capability as well.
The next one is the chat. So the chat section is designed for one-to-one chat. And when I say one-to-one, it's outside the context of conversations, but more similar to Skype chat. So if you're used to using Skype chat, you can go to chat, and you can actually look up anybody in your organization and start chatting. In fact, you can add more people to it, but the functionality is essentially Skype chat. So wait, Dux, does a person have to have Teams, or can I initiate in Teams and they're in Skype? Absolutely. If you don't have Skype turned on and somebody ping you from their Skype, it will show up in Teams. And from Teams, you can ping someone and they can pick it up in Skype. In fact, in case you don't know, Skype for Business Online will be deprecated in the next, I think, 6 to 12 months. Microsoft will roll in Skype for Business Online into Teams fully. So all the Skype for Business functionality, Skype for Business Online will be in Teams. Now, if you're on-prem, Skype for Business would still be there for the foreseeable future.
So yeah, so I think that's what we are at Dyson. We're Skype for Business on-prem. This is a contentious point at the moment, actually, because this is where the confusion's going to be. So we're going to have Skype for Business locally, and we're going to have Teams rolled out. So we will have multiple presence at the moment. That's going to be looked at and will be resolved going forward. But this is a concern of mine about confusing the users. And the project that I'm working on, called the Modern Office Project, the whole centre of that is all about users.
Yeah.
All about how we improve where we are now to where we want to go for the users. Not for us, not about implementing the technology. It's about how do we make it better for the users. And there is a small piece around. There's a lot of talk around this. We've got a Skype expert called Paul Gregory in Dyson. He's close to Microsoft and talking to them about how this is all going because he's been doing work for the last 2 years on Skype for Business separately. Now suddenly we're colliding together. How does that work and how can we make that simple to lots and lots of calls going, oh, I was on this, I was on that, and they said they were on presence, and so on and so forth. So this can be a bit confusing, but going forward, hopefully this will.
Next one is the meeting section. So essentially this pulls all your meetings from Outlook. It doesn't have to be a meeting that was created in Teams. It could be any meeting, and even if it's a Skype meeting, it will show up here. But obviously, if you've seen it already, if you're using Office 365 and Outlook, there's an option for you to do Teams meeting. So it will show up there. In fact, speaking of meetings, let me show you a quick video of what that experience looks like.
Thank you all for joining the meeting today. Yusuf, can you please present the deck?
Sure thing.
Thank you. Today's goal is to review our university recruiting process and prepare you to interview candidates here on campus. Feel free to ask questions throughout. Before we jump in, I wanted to give you...
So personally, I like the meeting experience better in Teams versus Skype. Obviously, from a technology perspective, the video and audio capability, I'm sure it comes from the same engine. But from an experience perspective, it encourages people to use and do video more. I don't know about you, when I do my Skype meetings or Teams meeting, I love videos, I love seeing people. And that kind of goes back to the generational preferences. If you saw the chart earlier, baby boomers, they don't like videos.
Don't make those assumptions. I'm a baby boomer.
Oh, there you go.
You made a whole load of assumptions on that slide, which I find rather insulting. What you're saying is all baby boomers just...
No, fair enough. Fair enough. No, I'm a baby boomer as well. I just look young and baby, but I'm a baby boomer. That was a research put together by Avana, so I just lifted it. And that's just across different stack and different world. That's not everybody, but in general. So yeah, there's exceptions like us, and I'm sure there's a lot of exceptions out there. But the experience from a meetings perspective, it's I feel like it's much better and conducive for video. And for me, I love it because I can see facial expressions, I can see body language, and all that good stuff.
Just one thing on the meetings. Do any of you run Skype for Business on-prem at the moment? Okay, do any of you have a large Mac community or have MacBooks? Do you have a problem where when they're Skyping, it comes up with the grey and never gets delivered? Absolutely. We get that as well. We've got a massive growing Mac community, and it's a real problem. You don't get that in Teams, because when they use the chat capability, it's using Skype Online, which is completely different technology. So that's why they're moving to much newer technology based on these zero services. So we don't get that anymore. So I would absolutely love to deliver Teams to all of the Mac people, because actually it will start to resolve a lot of these really, really simple issues. That you sent a message, and if you haven't got a Mac or you haven't got this in your environment, you won't quite understand the frustration. But imagine sending a message through Skype and it coming up with a red X saying it has been delivered, but actually it has been delivered. So then what we do is we email, because we're not sure if it's been delivered or not. And it's really frustrating. And we found out instantly, as soon as this came out, and we used it, as I say, over a year ago, that disappeared. So actually, a lot of our Mac people have started to move over to Teams and have given it to them, because you get the same look and feel on a Mac as you do on a PC as well. So the look and feel across those two is virtually identical. The only one other thing I want to mention is, because the gentleman in the front talked about OneNote wasn't there. So I don't see meetings at the moment in our Teams, because we are not Exchange Online yet. Okay? So until you're Exchange Online, you won't see that meetings have on the side. So they will actually change. So there's a few things I don't see in the apps at the moment. I don't think there's some files at the moment. So I mainly see, actually do see files. So I see the activity chat, meetings and files. And feedback down there. So it will change depending on what technology you're using in Office 365, which I like, I have to say. So I think it's very frustrating to have a meetings tab where everyone clicks on it and then it doesn't work.
Yep.
So I do like that functionality.
And to your point about extensibility, right? So for example, I just clicked on files. It shows me all the recent files I work with, the files that my team's working on that I've interacted with recently. So it gives me a summary of that. And then if you look at the three dots, the ellipses here, and later on I'll talk more about this, if you add apps to it, if the app has a navigational element, it will show up as well. Now,
background on what the candidate...
Certainly there's a lot of great use cases around Teams. I walked through some of the basics, kind of talk you through the interface, but where Teams comes in very, very powerful are for day-to-day use cases for the different groups in the organization. So, Richard, maybe you want to walk through some of these, and more importantly, talk about some of the use cases you guys have at
Yeah,
Dyson.
absolutely. So sorry, repeating myself again, but in my head, if I don't go through the story, I miss something out. So yeah, we started using this in November 2 years ago, and I decided it was going to be something that I would test, and I remember it really, really well. It was myself on a laptop and an iPad having a conversation with each. It's very lonely, very sad, but it was good because I got to understand the product. And then we started to roll it out to what we call our IT design team. So in IT, we have a design, deliver, and run function, and I'm in the design function. What we wanted to do was start to bring everyone together to be able to work on the design document. So what that is a request from the business for a problem, solve a problem. Okay? So, and usually it's with some technology, so we will look at that. So if we're using email, if we're using SharePoint, everyone had a different SharePoint site in different locations, and we wanted everything in one area. And I was challenged with, can you actually bring everything into one area? So realistically, it's kind of under the sort of project management planner that we've got here. And very, very, very quickly, we started to see some really good results. Right? This was a lot of work on my side as well. So I think I've been renamed. There's a couple of nicknames we have for people at Dyson. I'm Teams, and my friend Paul Gregory is Phones. And he talks about Skype. Okay? So it is a bit of a lost cause sometimes, trying to move people out of what they're comfortable with, especially email. You still get people sending emails, and you just have to kind of slowly move towards it. So we did do that, and the way that we did that was we had Frank, who's my director, and Chris Corns, who's the head of the department. We started to really get them on board and start to move all of the comms and all of everything into Teams, and that worked really, really well. Now, the other thing that we did poorly to start with, we said, there you go create some teams. So within a month, we had about 25, 30 teams. Exactly the same way we worked before, just lots and lots of different silos. Okay? Because everyone went, oh, I've got a project to need a team. Oh, I've got a project to need a team. Actually, the project you two are working on is just about some chairs. Does anyone care about chairs? Really care about chairs? It's not secret. Not a secret chair at Dyson. Okay? And this is what we tried to move. So actually, we then said, hold on a minute. We've gone off and we started creating all these 25 different teams. Do we need them? No, we don't. So we sort of brought it all the way in. And we brought it down to 2 teams. Okay? One's called IT Design Team. And we've got lots of channels underneath that team. So we will talk about different channels. We've got one for governance, we've got one for templates, all of those, we break them down. But they're open. So remember, when we're adding them into the IT Design Team, they can see all of the channels. Again, for the administration, love that. Stick them at the top, they can have access to everything. Why not? Now, the IT design projects, this is where it gets fun. So this is where you're now trying to tell people, do you know what? That chair project that you're working on, that Halabington project you're working on, which is redoing an air hangar, there's about 3, 4 different massive air hangars that we're converting. It's really not a secret. Okay? It's a conversion of a hangar. Okay? What's going in the hangar? I'll discuss. But we're converting it, it's absolutely fine. What we started to do is create many, many, many channels, about 49 channels underneath the IT design projects. Now, that's worked really, really well, and I favourite the ones that I'm interested in. Okay, so don't think you're going to get blasted with lots and lots of information. You can choose which ones you're interested in. You choose that channel that you want to see the information from. And this is where the app mentioning comes in, which I really, really like. So you've got 3 ways to app mention. App mention the individual, app mention the channel, app mention the team. So when you app mention the team, that's like a big blast to everyone in the room. So this could be our big posse, our big team, and I'm going to say hello to all of you, and then we've got our subset, and then we go down to the individual. Okay, so it's really, really useful.
Yeah, so like this. So I'm in a team here. If I want to get everybody's attention, instead of hello, lowercase team, I can say hello, Boston Design Institute, because one of the things that this does as well, it sends notifications via email. So I really want to get people's attention, and if it so happens they're not in their client, they don't have an app on their phone, they'll be alerted on email. They'll say, hey, you've been mentioned, click here, and then they'll take them to the thread where they're mentioned.
So yeah, this will pop up on your iPad, on your iPhone, on your Android device, whatever you want. And you can also you can tailor the notifications. So if you're on your laptop as well as on your iPhone and on your iPad, you can tell it, look, if I'm on the desktop, don't want to send me all the notifications to other devices. They don't need it. Actually, I have mine on. It's just quite funny. Like that. It's quite good fun. So we've now got two teams. We've got our IT projects team, and we've got our IT design team. Okay. So we've now decided that technology works. We've done the proof of concept, tested the technology, does it work? Absolutely does. Now. So now we need pilots. So then we start chatting to people. And as you can probably imagine, I like to chat to people. So I like to chat to people quite a lot. So I talk around and I start spreading a bit of information around what we're doing. And that grows very, very, very quickly. And within about a month, I've got about 1,000 people that would love to start using this technology. So now I've got this group, so I can start to roll it out. So then we start to roll it out to the next group, and this is what we call our pioneers group. Okay, so our pioneers group are a group of, I think it's around 86 people this year. And these are people that they're going to take and develop and potentially could be our next future leaders. Okay, but they also come up with ideas of how to solve problems. And they're using email, and they're using file shares, or even worse, they're using Facebook groups. That seems to be a growing thing at Dyson at the moment, which fills me with dread. Also WhatsApp, and I believe at some point WhatsApp we're going to start adding files.
Yep.
So you can start share files. Great, that's another security nightmare for us, isn't it? So all of this information outside of what you can control, and when people leave, they're taking that with them, or even worse, you don't even know what they've actually taken. So we want to start bringing them in. So the pioneers have started to use this, and again, we've got one team called the Pioneers Group, and underneath we've got lots and lots of channels for different pioneers that are in there. Their teams of about 5, and they've started to use that, and they love it. They absolutely love it. They've got one place to go. We now do all of our communications through that, and this comes back to use the general channel for. Entirely up to you. Okay. So what we are going to use it for, the pioneers, is the comms. So a lady called Emily is going to drive all of the comms through there, so they're going to know that's where the comms go. She's not going to email it anymore. We're going to do one email. It's going to be this week to drive and say that's it now. No more comms via emails all going into it. So if they miss it, they miss it. Sometimes it's a little bit of tough work.
And Richard, you bring up a good point as you walk through this, right? Providing simple guidance is critical.
Absolutely.
I mean, at the end of the day, these are tools, and users would definitely take advantage of it. But the problem is, if we don't provide some kind of guidance, and each organization is different, I'll use it one way, you use it another way, the other person will use it another way, and that's where chaos and frustration happens. Yeah.
Yeah. As we learned at the beginning, very, very quickly, you get this sprawl of teams. When I used to deal with VMware, you get server sprawl. They used to call it. Suddenly, you've gone from having 10 physical to thousands of. So we've now started to bring Australia online. So this is our first full country deployment. So we're going to get all of them online. That'll be 300 people. They've just started with 3 teams. They've got an all Australia team, a projects team, and a IT one specifically. So when we started to talk to the IT design team, and we said, when do I create a channel or do I create a team? For us, it was really, really simple. So at Dyson, if you're working on something in RDD, that clearly is a certain set of groups. If I only do these first 3 rows that are allowed to see, so we wouldn't put that as a channel, because that's a sensible thing to do. But actually, if it is something that isn't, and you might be the person that's sat at the back there, involved with the people at the front, why not stick it where everyone is? Because you don't have to go, oh, I've got IG to that. So when you share that link, they'll automatically be in. Or you can mention them and bring them into that conversation. So as I said, I'm not involved in every single project other than the IT design projects. But at some point, there might be a collaboration part. So they might want to bring me in. If I'm not in this conversation over here, I can never ever take part. Now, it might be that I don't. And there is a lot of projects that go on that I have absolutely no idea about. And there's good reasons for that. Because, that's our idea. So yeah.
Awesome.
So I think that probably leads us really well on to the mobile.
Yeah. So extending that, right? You start your team's journey with a lot of the basic conversation and communication, but Microsoft realizes there may be advanced requirements and integrations that's needed. So with Teams, There's a lot of essentially apps available that you can add. To date, there's about 150 plus integrations, and it's growing. In the next update for Teams, you'll see a store where you can add all this. But one of the things that's really exciting about Teams is the bot integration. So those of you may have heard of bots already, and essentially bots are automated assistants. By default, if you use Teams, there's a T-bot. Essentially, it's a bot that you can ask questions, anything about Teams. How do I create a channel? How do I add a member? But you can add more bots. So let me show you a quick example. I've added a bot here called Busy. It's a free bot. You can add it. And Busy is an automation bot that connects with Office 365. So what are some of the things you can do? There's tons of things you can do. So let me show you an example, and I'll walk you through what it does. I need a site. I need a site. I need a site. So imagine on my Teams app on my phone, I say, hey, I need a site. Right? So what it's doing is Busy, pick that up, and then it'll process it, it'll check who I am, making sure I'm allowed to make this request. He says, great, what should this title of the site be? I'm asking for a SharePoint site, essentially. Birmingham. And how about a description? Vendor SharePoint site. Now, it will just happen here, right? In the past, if you want our users to create a site, what do you tell them? Hey, go to ServiceNow or go to this form, fill out a request. It's essentially doing the same thing, but I'm making the bot do it. Obviously, check my permissions, and check who I am, all that good stuff. You guys like this? Ducks, this is crazy rocket science. I don't have all these developers doing this. No, you don't need a developer. So let me walk you through. And by the way, this is a simple example. You can do whatever you want in Office 365. So let me stop sharing my iPhone here, and let me kind of walk you through briefly. So what I did is I added the bot into Teams, and I connected the bot to Flow, Microsoft Flow. So are you guys familiar with Microsoft Flow? It's a workflow technology. So with Microsoft Flow, let me see where my flows are here. I can add flows around different things. So in this case, I have a flow for team site requests. So the bot, Busy Bot, talked to this, and there's rules in there. Okay, check permissions, this, that, the other. Now, in theory, it could have gone ahead and created a SharePoint site. But because I want to put a little governance around it, I connected it to another technology so that when somebody requests for a site, this technology, it's called AppPoint Cloud Governance, that my boss would get a email alert, and the email alert would say, hey, Dux just requested for a SharePoint site, you need to approve it. Once he clicks on the link, it'll take him to this page. As it's loading, he'll get a notification, and the request comes in, and then he can look at it, all this good stuff, approve it, and once approved, voila, the URL will be sent back to Teams, and the link would be there saying, here's your SharePoint site, use it now. What do you guys think? Tough crowd here. But all that with no coding. Now, take it further. What else can you do? There's so much you can do. So think about all these request-like process. Hook it up with bots. The world of Alexa, the world of Cortana just opened up within your Teams environment. And you can do it from the phone. Yeah.
So for me, bots are absolutely brilliant. So at Dyson, we're getting around 30 new people a week. The site's expanding. We've got meeting rooms that are popping up left, right, and centre, and all these new people are starting. So I'm really, really keen on like a new starter bot, and for it to grow and it to learn about what people are asking, so that actually they don't need to go to one place. They've just got one bot that would help them to answer these questions. But when we don't know the answer, we can start to feed it those answers, so we can actually really progressive.
I saw a customer using the BusyBot. Essentially, an assistant within the company. You can say, hey, where's the HR form? Hey, who should I talk to about expenses? Or who? Can you tell me what's the background in C# in the bot? Because tied into your Office 365 environment, looked up people's user profile and Dell would return the right information without the user figuring out where to go. What are some of the guidance, initial steps, right? So keep in mind, Teams does not support SharePoint on premises. What does that mean? Every time a team is created, the file repository is SharePoint Online. Right? You can't point it to SharePoint on-prem. SharePoint Online required to share and store files in team conversations. OneDrive is required to share and store files in private chat. Earlier I talked about one-on-one chat. If you share a file there, all the files will be stored in the person of whoever uploaded that file will be on their OneDrive. So it's going to use that. Users must be enabled for Office 365 group creation to create teams. So what does that mean, docs? Who can create teams? Essentially, everybody in the organization can create teams. It's all or nothing. Because it's tied to Office 365 groups. If you turn off Office 365 groups, no one can create teams. No one can use Office 365 groups. Right? You can leverage Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and OneDrive governance compliance policies. Microsoft has built in some fundamental to get you started, how you can put some level of governance. And there's tons of great resources out there, which I'll share on how you think about governance. And just like what Richard's mentioned, they have guidelines and best practices on how to use it. And Microsoft also released PowerShell modules so you can tweak and update and control certain things in Teams programmatically. Now, what about external collaboration? This feature was introduced a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And, it's great because one of the big benefits of Teams, not only to allow a better way to work together internally, but it'd be great if I work with my partner, with other people in other organizations. So they introduced this capability, and they're still improving it. So today, who can access it? External users must have Azure AD accounts, right? And if they don't have one, they can create one online. You don't have to pay for the external users. There's no additional cost, so certainly you can invite them. And you can define essentially their permission. So for example, you can say external user, they can only work within a channel. They cannot create new channel, they cannot create new teams. So you can kind of limit within the confines of where you want external users to work. Here's a good chart of capabilities today for guest access, what internal Teams user can do, and what guest users can and cannot do. Microsoft is continually improving this so that the experience will be much better, especially when you're working across different organizations. Now, I see a lot of you taking pictures. We'll make this slide available, and in fact, I have tons of checklists and documentation. I'm sure Richard has some content that we would love to share too, so we'll make sure we'll zip it up into the 20 gig file that we'll send as an attachment, all right? Now, if we think about, what's coming, right? Today, I feel like Teams is so rich and fully capable already, but there's more to come. Microsoft is continually investing in Teams, and I'm sure, based on everything you're seeing that Microsoft is pushing out, a lot is centered around Teams. So just to highlight a couple of things, right? I mentioned earlier already, they're going to retire Skype for Business Online, so the capabilities such as calling is now available in Teams. So if you have audio calling capability in your Skype for Business Online where you make calls, you can do the exact same thing in Teams. They've invested a lot in admin usage reports. If I bring this up quickly, if you go to Office 365 Admin Center under reports, they're investing a lot on these reports and allows you to see how Teams is being used. And I'm sure, Richard, this helps you a lot in your organization.
Every week I look at this. Every week.
Yeah. You can see how people are adopting, how they're being used, and you get a lot of good stats that's similar to what you can get for SharePoint and Yammer and all those other workloads. Local data residency is coming in UK soon. For the exact dates, you just go to the Office 365 roadmap. They have dates on local data residency as well, published. And then it's going to support conditional access on Macs. So, we walked through how the world looks like today. We talked about Office 365 and how groups work with teams. We provided some high-level walkthrough of how teams work, and I'm grateful that Richard's here to share what they're doing with teams. Before we look at some of these resources, are there any other questions that we can address? Yes, sir. I'm sorry, when will you lock down? Very good question. Can you lock down only certain people creating teams, certain people not? Today, the answer is no. It's all or nothing. Will that change? I haven't seen anything in the roadmap, Ron. Yes.
That was covered in the Office 365 group roadmap session yesterday afternoon. It is coming. So
it's coming. All right, good. Yeah, very good. Thank you, sir. Does that answer your question, sir? All right, yes, sir.
So I'd like to know if it's coming, will it be via an admin center? Or?
Yes. So if it's coming, so it's going to be through Admin Center. So I suspect how they're going to implement that is through policies and different groups and whatnot. Yes, sir.
If I've had a group and I've then turned that into a team effectively, how do I get back from the team interface to the group content I used to know?
Good question. So his question is, if I have a group and I added my a team to that group, how do I go back to the interface? So Office 365 Groups does not have an interface. Okay? But hold on, Ducks. I created an Outlook. How do I jump back to that? So let me show you an example. So if I look at this, let me jump into my Office 365. So within the confines of Teams, and I want to jump back to my listing of Office 365 groups, the most basic and common way to do this is jump into Outlook. You can do this in your client as well. And notice it shows you all your Office 365 groups. Okay? And if I go to my Birmingham posse group, which I just created, not only do I see, keep in mind, all these emails that I'll see here is part of the groups and Outlook capabilities, the distribution capability. But notice up top here, it shows me all the workloads that I have available to me as a part of this Office 365 group. So to answer your question, where can I easily see it? Just jump to Outlook and you see a list. But the important thing is, everything that happens in Teams, you don't see it here. You have to go to Teams. The only things you may be able to see are files. So let me jump into this Boston Design, for example. I can look at files, and notice all these files right here are pretty much the same files I have that surface in Teams. But again, the Teams conversation, you can only see that within Teams. Does that answer your question, sir? All right, let's take this.
Follow on from that. You could embed the groups page as a web page as a tab into.
Yes, that's absolutely. It's a good way to do it. So you can take this and then create a tab and do like a little iframe. Yeah, 100%. All right. So, just to kind of wrap up here. First of all, what do you guys think? Was this helpful? All right. So again, we asked that you fill in the emails, put the feedback. Here are all the resources that's available from Microsoft. And like I said, if you want more resources, I've got checklists and templates and some other presentation, infographic. Feel free to drop me a line or go to Twitter, look me up, or come by the booth. Richard and I will be there. We'd be happy to hear from you. But again, thanks everybody for coming, and enjoy the rest of Tech Summit. Thank you.
Thank you.